welcome to our podcast, Dr. Diaries Adventures to Ireland. I'm your host, Graham. The aim of this podcast is to showcase doctors' relocation journeys to Ireland. So whether you're a doctor interested in the move or just curious about life in Ireland, this is the podcast for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Dr. Diaries Adventures to Ireland. Today we're joined by Bianca. Bianca, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you so much for having me as well, Graham. So my name is Bianca, obviously. I'm a medical doctor. I came over to Ireland in January this year. It has been a very exciting journey. I've been a doctor now for 3 years, so completed internship in community service in South Africa and then made the move over. I'm currently in Dublin at the moment.
Great, thanks, and thanks again for that introduction. Tell us a little bit where you are right now.
Sure. So at the moment, I'm in Dublin. I'm working at Tallaght University Hospital in the emergency department, and I'm currently staying in Dublin 1. So it is quite a trek down to Tallaght, but I've been enjoying it so far.
Yeah, and Tallaght, for anyone who doesn't know, you'll definitely be able to confirm this, Bianca. Probably one of the busiest emergency medicine departments in Dublin, if not the country, because it's serving quite a large catchment area. How are you finding that in comparison to back home?
I think a lot of people are under the impression that coming to Ireland would be less busy compared to in South Africa. But Tallaght has been exceptionally busy. The staff are amazing, however, and the consultants are great. So there's enough resources that are available that actually make the job much better compared to in South Africa.
Sure, yeah, and that's a big difference that a lot of staff are saying, isn't it? That yes, of course it is busy. I think any hospital is going to be busy, but the resources are there, and there's a lot more support available to than what you might be used to. So can we maybe if you could jump into this journey that you've taken on the move across to Ireland and start where we first met. What did you think when the idea came up about moving across to Ireland?
I think I was aware of the opportunities that Ireland did afford doctors, specifically in my internship, but then in community service is when we got in contact. And I was very keen because obviously in South Africa, there's a huge issue with employment for doctors, especially after ComServe. So I wanted to place myself in the best position and also expose myself to those opportunities. So I was very interested. I was interested in emergency medicine and also surgery as prospective career paths. And the idea of moving over was something that I was very interested in with my husband as well.
Yeah, and there's plenty of doctors like you where they're coming with a partner. What does your husband do?
Oh, my husband's a structural engineer, so he's not a doctor.
Yeah, and how is he finding work here in Ireland as the
He loves
traveling
it.
spouse?
Yes, no, he loves it. He's enjoying it much more compared to in South Africa. The working environment is much better. The colleagues that he's been with have also been great. So he's settled in quite well.
Yeah, and that's a big piece, isn't it? It's not just you moving yourself to find a job. Also, your husband had to find a job, and if it only works for one of you and doesn't the other, what's the point in moving across? That's what it is.
Definitely.
We find it's very important for us as a team within Match Medics to be able to understand everyone that's involved in this whole journey and try and support as much as possible. So great to hear that the two of you are loving Irish life, despite our rugby rivalry. We're very closely aligned in terms of what the two countries have to offer, I guess. So from that point, then and I'd like to think a lot of either current ComServers or post ComServers will be thinking the way that you're thinking. Do I have enough experience to move across? Am I going to find the right job in my specialty? Talk us through where your head was at that time.
I think at that stage, I was a bit concerned. I had obviously been exposed to emergency medicine during internship, but during my community service year, I had spent 6 months within general surgery as well as ICU. So I was a bit concerned that maybe I didn't have enough time in emergency medicine. I think this is also a misunderstanding that oftentimes South African doctors think that there are only posts in emergency medicine in Ireland. And this may be something that maybe hinders them from making the move. But I think spending time in an emergency department in Ireland is so important just to get yourself accustomed to the healthcare system, because it is quite different compared to in South Africa. So I was a bit concerned about that, but that actually wasn't an obstacle at all. During community service, you try and build up your CV and your skills by doing as many courses that you can to actually improve your own wit as a doctor. And I think that had placed me in a better route with regards to actually getting a job in Ireland. So I think at my mindset at that stage in ComServe, I just wanted the best to place myself rather in the best position possible that I could to actually get a job.
Absolutely, and that's I think really solid career advice. Again, appealing to the current com servers or even internshippers and current com servers and recent post com serve doctors, where emergency mightn't be your final destination, but it's that stepping stone into the Irish system. And as you said, it gives them an opportunity to, and give you an opportunity to get used to the system, get to understand the different workings, because it is a very different system to the South system.
Yes, it definitely is. And like you said, I feel that working in an emergency department, it's so valuable just getting yourself positioned and used to the people as well as the different types of pathologies that you see in an Irish setting, because it is quite different compared to in South Africa. So it's something that will benefit you as a doctor.
Yeah, and when we talk about emergency, any SAFA is talking about emergency, we always think of trauma. What's the biggest, I guess, patient difference you've seen in comparison to a busy emergency in South Africa?
I think it has to be with the patient population. I think on my first day of work, I actually saw two patients who were over the age of 90 years, and they were
Yeah,
actually at a very good baseline with regard to functionality. So a lot of the patients present with medical problems, and there's a large geriatric population due to the great support system that is available in Ireland for its population. So whereas in South Africa, a lot of the emergency department presentations would be trauma based. There is
yeah,
some trauma that obviously comes in, but it definitely is more medically based with an older group of population of patients.
yeah, and that's a big piece within emergency medicine now, isn't it? There's quite a large aging population, so you will see an overarching majority being geriatric, as you label it there, geriatric patients. Anything from, correct me if I'm wrong, Bianca, anything from what, 60, 65 upwards is considered geriatric?
So in our emergency department, we consider anyone 75 and above as being a part
Okay,
of the geriatric population. Yep.
yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the mix between medical and surgical. How much of a split would you say, on average, would you say on a a typical week, would you see between medical and surgical?
It's quite difficult, obviously, because it depends if there's some festival happening nearby, then there may be a bit more trauma that's involved. But
Sure.
on average, I think at the moment, I'd say possibly maybe a 70-30 split, being
Okay.
70 medical and then 30 surgical.
Okay, and that again, another great difference to highlight. It is largely medically based, isn't it?
Yes.
And there is, of course, opportunities to see some surgical emergencies, but they're just not as severe as perhaps you might be used to coming across. Which I believe is a superpower of the South Africans. You guys see absolutely everything before you come across here, and that's why that
Hmm.
base level of emergency medicine experience is so highly sought after. If you were to shed a bit of light in terms of your typical day within Tallaght Emergency Medicine Department, what would that look like?
Sure. So it obviously depends what time your shift starts. So obviously in
Yeah,
emergency department, it's definitely shift work that you're doing.
yeah,
You'll normally start off with a round where there's a consultant or mostly more than one consultant. And then you basically go through on the board the patients that are in the department. And from there on, you basically start your shift. You see as many patients that you're able to see and manage as many emergencies, whatever else comes up. You obviously work very closely with the nursing staff, and the nursing staff are absolutely incredible. And thereafter, you'll have another ward round or so, and then your shift ends.
okay. And typically, they go from either 10 to 12-hour shifts.
Yeah, so anywhere from 8 hour, 10 hour shifts, it's hardly ever 12 hours.
Okay, which will be great news for anyone back home listening to that. That there's the idea of a 24-hour shift just is non-existent. I'm sure you've had your fair share of 24-hour shifts back home too. So no doubt this is a welcome change. But still, as I say, it's still busy. You're still
Yes.
kept on your feet. There's still a variety of cases to deal with, but it's just a different environment. If you were to give even one bit of career advice to Bianca 10 months ago, what would that
Mhm.
be? Now knowing what you know now.
I think a lot of times during ComServe, the focus is on building your CV, but I think taking a step back and actually sitting back and appreciating the skills that you learn, because it's not only about bulking up your CV, but also improving your own confidence and your own clinical skills and your
Sure.
decision making. So I think focusing more on that and exploring that and cultivating that further.
Amazing. Great piece of advice to share. And in your case, you've used your background in emergency to springboard you towards the direction where you want to end up ultimately, which is in surgery. And that first step on that journey is
Mhm.
Tallaght Emergency Medicine Department. So I know we'll be talking further, no doubt, throughout your career to see how we can assist in guiding in that direction. Let me jump into a couple of quick fire questions now. Seeing as you're here nearly 6 months, you're no doubt you've taken in a bit of Irish life within the capital city. Where would be your favourite place in Ireland if you were to?
It may sound like a cliche, but I'd have to say the cliffs of Moher. They were
Okay,
absolutely stunning, and we had great weather the day that we actually visited.
yeah, you got lucky. I've heard it recently of someone nearly been blown off the cliffs of Moher on a wild and wet day, but you got a nice dry sunny day.
Yes, I did. It was absolutely stunning.
Amazing. Cliffs of Moher, put that down. Any, I guess, would you any sort of claim to your favourite Irish celebrity? Have you brushed up on who's out there that you're a fan of since moving?
Yes. I actually really, really adore Conor McGregor. We
Okay,
attended a Bellator event a few weeks ago, and he wasn't actually fighting, but he was actually present. So it was quite interesting to see him in person.
yeah, that was going to split the audience, no doubt,
Yes, I
because
know.
he is he's a chalk or cheese type of guy. But Conor McGregor is who you're putting your name to. Very good. And next one, in terms of your favorite, let's say Irish phrase or slang that when you heard it first, you thought, what are they saying there? What one springs to your mind?
Oh, there's so many, but I think the one that I hear every day quite often is the use of the word grand. So
Yeah.
especially with someone, if you're offering them like a biscuit or something and they'll politely decline and say, no, I'm grand. Or if you apologize because you've bumped into someone, they'd be like, no, you're grand. But the way that they say it is just so comforting to me.
Yeah. And would you get that back home?
No, not at all. I think we hardly ever use the word grand. It's mostly
Yeah.
just fine or okay. So coming across, I had to just realign my thinking and be like, okay, what does this actually mean?
Yeah. Okay. And then have you found yourself using it now?
Yes, actually, I have.
So that's a pure sign that you're turning Irish very slowly but surely. And then I guess, despite you haven't been here too long, but no doubt I'm sure you still have that homesick feeling sometimes. Are there any
hmm
home comforts that maybe you brought with you when you came across, or you've asked friends or family to send across to you?
Oh, definitely. I love tea, my rooibos tea, so red
Okay.
bush tea. I definitely still have some tea bags left over, but I definitely can't go without it.
And you haven't tried Barry's tea or
I
Lyme's
have,
tea, the
I
Irish
have,
tea debate here?
and I really enjoy myself some berries tea too.
Okay, so that you're in the Conor McGregor camp, the Barry's tea camp, and
Yes.
you're splitting opinion across the board. Very good. Okay, and I guess talking further about your future journey here in Ireland, to yourself and your husband, now that you're here close to 6 months, what's ahead of you guys? Do you see yourself here longer term?
We do definitely see ourselves here the longer term. I think with us specifically, when we came across, we didn't necessarily focus on the negatives in South Africa. We focused on the positives in Ireland, and that really helps us with regards to there'll be negatives wherever you go, but it helps you to focus on the positives that are here. So we definitely are considering setting in permanent roots for the future.
Amazing. And I guess have family come to travel? Have they sort of put in dates in your calendar to say keep it free because we're coming across to visit you?
My parents are thinking of coming across later on in the year. I know it's a bit more difficult now with the new immigration laws and South Africans now requiring visas before they come over, but they are definitely planning on coming and paying us a visit.
Yes, and that is, and time of recording, that is very fresh news, I guess, in terms
Hmm.
of bringing in an extra element to the immigration process for South Africans. You know, seeing as you're here already, that obviously hasn't impacted you, but it will
Hmm.
definitely impact others who are due to come through, along with any traveling family members who come across. Do you think, as you've gone the easier route, do you think that'll be a deterrent for people, or do you think there's still a strong enough pull for South Africans to move across?
I definitely think there's still a strong enough pull for South Africans to come across, especially as doctors. I think it's so useful the fact that you don't have to write any board examinations to come to Ireland. So as South African doctors, that's something that's extremely attractive for us. So there is quite a bit of administration involved, even when I was making the move across. So I don't think it'll be a deterrent for South Africans in the future.
Okay, great. Well, we were glad of that because when we saw that news too, we were thinking, well, it put people off, but it's still, as you say, it's still one of the easier
Hmm.
English-speaking European countries and Western countries to be able to move to with that
Hmm.
highly coveted South African medical degree. That if we can jump back to getting, I guess, a bit of advice, not just career wise, but for any other Safas who could be listening to this, or anyone else across the world who are thinking of considering a move to Ireland. What bit of advice would you give them?
I would say that if you're in two mindsets about staying in South Africa or whichever country you're currently in versus coming to Ireland, just do your research beforehand. And if it's something that you really are considering, I would say just take the jump and do it. Because if you don't, if I didn't make the move, I think I'd always question how it would have gone. And I may have even regretted it in the future if I didn't actually take the move, experience it for myself, and see what opportunities there are.
Okay, and I wonder, you probably have, because I know you're a regular enough poster on Facebook. You probably have friends reaching out to you, wondering what's Ireland all about. Have you
Hmm.
seen an increase in friends or former colleagues intrigued by the green fields and Cliffs of Moher and Conor McGregor type content you're putting out there?
No, definitely. I think already at Tala, there are quite a few South Africans in the department. And now with the new rotation that has started, there are more South Africans that are coming across. So I think there's generally quite a big influx of South Africans that will keep coming forward.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of getting, don't know whether or not you wanted to stay within the Safa community here or you'll get a mix of everywhere, but have you been to the Woolshed pub? I believe that's the hotspot for South Africans to catch any South African sport.
Yes, I've heard of it, but I haven't had the opportunity to go yet.
Yeah, that's where the rugby's all at it by all accounts. So
Mm.
you'll need to get yourself down there. If we could maybe finish on asking you, what's the best part for you if we're to compare the two worlds? What's the best part for you about living here in Ireland?
I think there's so many beautiful things about Ireland and specifically in Dublin. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just the public transport, for example, and it's definitely a different lifestyle compared to back in South Africa. For example, just checking out your own groceries and packing your own bags. But I think
Yeah.
specifically Dublin, it's such a mixing pot and melting pot of so many people from all over the world, whether it's Brazil, the Philippines, and obviously your Irish people. So feeling that you're a part of this international community and that you're not necessarily the only foreigner in this place, which may feel quite isolating at times. There's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of support systems around you. You just need to go and find them.
And would you encourage people to just go exploring? Would you encourage them to just go to a gig or go to a music event or something to just branch out and make new friends? Or what did you guys do in terms of getting into the community?
No, definitely. I think with us, when we first arrived, we obviously wanted to explore. There's a lot that Dublin has to offer, such as the Temple Bar area, your Grafton area. So just put yourself out there, and people are generally quite friendly. Even people from work, you make friends at work and they invite you to places. So it's really important. You can't just stay stuck in your apartment or your accommodation all the time and go to work. It's not only about working in Ireland, but it's about immersing yourself and having a life in Ireland. And there's so much that Ireland has to offer with regard to it.
Absolutely, and we're not going to sugarcoat things either. Of course, there are pros and cons. We'll finish, I think, on one very real con, and people ask
Mm-hmm.
this all the time, and that is, what's your hot take on the Irish weather?
Oh, personally, I generally enjoy cold, wet weather, but I have
Okay,
to say it hasn't been as bad as I had originally thought it would be. There's been
yeah.
quite a few hot days this side. Today is a bit rainy and down, but it honestly isn't that bad at all.
Okay, not bad at all. That's a good review. That's a good review from someone from South Africa. So thanks, thanks for sharing that very polite review of our very mixed Irish weather, which you'll find a lot of Irish people will find any reason to give out about when one day is sunny and the next day is
Hmm.
full of rain. Great stuff. Thanks again so much, Bianca, for joining us on the podcast today. And if there's anyone who can relate to your story, they can either reach out to you or reach out to the team in Matchmedics. But thanks again for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Graham.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you like what you heard today, please follow wherever you get your podcasts. Want to kickstart your relocation journey? Reach out to the team on our socials at Matchmedics.